What do you want? A podcast? Well, good, because I'm the offrailgamer, and this is episode 46 of the Off the Rails podcast. Hello there, Organauts, and welcome in. Sorry for that grumpy sounding introduction. I was trying something different, but I'm not sure it worked out. Fear not though, I'm not in a foul mood. Quite the opposite in fact, as I'm excited to be spending the next half hour-ish with you fine people. What's it all about then, this Off the Rails podcast? Well, to tell you, we've special guest Terry Bollier, who you might better know as one Hulk Hogan.
Let me tell you, brother, Off the Rails podcast is a show that talks about video games and other related topics, brother. And all the Hulkamaniacs the world over listen, brother, 'cause they know it's the next best thing after seeing me returning to take the gold at WrestleMania one more time. And do you know what, brother? That's a big deal if you ask me, so you better strap in and get ready to put your ears around this podcast, brother, 'cause otherwise the Hulk's gonna come for you, brother.
Alright, Hulk, thank you for that endorsement there, but please don't threaten my Organauts. Not that I'd dare tell you what to do, of course, but I hope we can keep things friendly. Anyway, I think that summed up what the show's all about well enough. What else do I need to tell you?
Tell 'em about your socials, brother.
That's right, thanks Hulk. Off the Rails goes out on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music and Castbox, and you can also find all past episodes on those platforms, right the way back to episode 1 as well. And if you look to the podcast episode description, you'll find links to my YouTube, Twitch, TikTok and X as well. I don't really use X much, I just can't be bothered to go on it to close my account. And that, listeners, is the intro section covered off. So wave goodbye to Mr. Hogan, and while the next sting plays, I'll go and open up the Retro Marcade. Come on in. God, it's lively in here again, isn't it? Not that I can complain about that. It's nice to see these old game cabinets getting some attention, even after all these years. And you'll see behind me the game I want to talk about today. Bad Dudes is a side-scrolling beat-em-up released into arcades by Data East in 1988. I'd have to say it was around 10 years later that I first saw it. Some listeners may be able to correct me, but I think there was a Bad Dudes cabinet in the bar that served as the entrance to Bodmin Jail. I didn't have the opportunity to play the cabinet that day, but it did spark my imagination, and I spent the rainy afternoon indoors drawing the pair fighting bad guys on top of moving trains and such. At the time, I had no idea it had been ported to home consoles, but I can't see that it ever made it onto the Sega Master System, so I'd have had no way of playing it anyway. So what's it all about then? Well, set in Washington DC, the Dragon Ninja has kidnapped US President Ronnie, based on actual president at the time, Ronald Reagan. Keep him, I'd have said. His reign of terror did more to harm Western democracy than his disappearance would have. But the Bad Dudes, two absolutely shredded muscle men, distinguishable from one another only by the colour of their tank tops, decided to play 80s action hero and chase down the Dragon Ninja through the streets of New York. Things quickly turn wild, as you'll also do battle atop a moving big rig, or lorry as we call them in Blighty. Then you'll pursue them through a sewer that spills out into a forest, and finally you'll duel the Dragon Ninja on top of a moving freight train, the scene I'd so feverishly drawn again and again as a small boy. And what do the Bad Dudes get for their bravery? Well, once the Dragon Ninja has been defeated, they're invited to a barbecue at the White House, where they can be seen eating burgers with President Ronnie. I hope they've been cooked properly, because we don't want the bad dudes having to chow down a box of Imodium before they can leave the house if the president gets kidnapped again. I'll tell you what though, I've been jesting and making light of Bad Dudes, but I did finally get to play it on my Evercade when it was included on the Data East Arcade Classics cartridge, and it's good fun. If I'd have been playing in a real arcade, having to sink money into the machine every time I got a game over, I don't think I'd have got very far. Arcade machines were designed to take money off of kids, and this game kicks my butt. Fortunately, with the Evercade arcade carts, you only have to press the select button to insert coin, rather than actually parting with the entire contents of your wallet. Bad Dudes really epitomised 80s Hollywood action. It played like your favourite Kurt Russell or Sylvester Stallone movie, with the heroes wearing vests to show off their monumental biceps. Don't forget how huge our friend from the intro, Hulk Hogan, was through the 80s and 90s as well. He was a household name, and of course Arnie had hit the silver screen in films including The Terminator and Total Recall. Big was better in the 80s, and the more muscle, the bigger the star. And these Bad Dudes had muscles for days. Bad Dudes has also had a release on Nintendo Switch, so I've read when researching the game for this expose, so it's accessible for many gamers to try out today, and I would genuinely recommend it. But tell me, have you played Bad Dudes, and did you ever experience it in the arcade? I'd love to hear your stories with this game, so why not write me at offrailgamer@gmail.com. My email address is in the podcast episode description, and if you keep your message clean and aren't too mean, you just might hear me read it out in the next episode's Listener's Whispers. Now, how about a little gaming news? We start with a link to Gaming Bible this week, who share with us a game remake that Steam is making available for you to add to your library and keep for free. Apparently, the game is being rebuilt from scratch and is in early access at the moment, so it could be a bit glitchy or buggy if you play it today, but of course they should be patched out in time as the game is developed. But what is this remake we can get our hands on? I don't remember ever hearing of Rake before, but apparently it was a 2015 survival horror in which you had to try and avoid the deadly advances of some monstrous predator. I don't think it's a Jimmy Savile simulator. Well, anyway, you might be better able to tell me whether this is something to get excited for, but it's free, so it's not like you've lost anything if you do decide to take a risk at it. For myself, I'm still undecided, but that is primarily due to the already massive backlog of games I still need to work my way through at some point. And Nintendo have finally officially announced the upcoming release of the Switch 2. The console will feature magnetic Joy-Cons and will be backwards compatible with the Switch physical and digital games. This means you won't have to go buying remakes and remasters to be able to play them on your new console. You can expect the prices not to drop though. The system will also be getting its own exclusive titles, so it won't simply be a more powerful version of the same console generation. From what I could see, there's been no mention of a release date yet, nor what it's likely to cost, but I understand more details will follow at the Nintendo Direct in April. I've posted links to both these stories in the podcast episode description in case you'd like to have a look for yourself. Now though, allow me to catch you up on what I've been playing recently, in the section I've rather confusingly titled, What I've Been Playing Recently. Well, you know what? I did jump back into WWE 2K24, but the bug with the My Rise campaign is still preventing me from progressing any further in that storyline. What I did do, though, was to play through the WrestleMania Showcase, which has you play memorable and iconic matches from the pay-per-view's history, and I mean all the way through the history, way back to WrestleMania 1 in 1985, right the way up to WrestleMania 39 from last year. Spoiler alert for anyone still progressing through the showcase, you should skip ahead 15 or 30 seconds now. You finish up picking a superstar to enter a Royal Rumble with. You'll be the first competitor in the ring, must eliminate 10 other superstars, and be the last man left in the ring at the end. The purpose of the WrestleMania Showcase is that it allows you to unlock a number of superstars that can then be added to your rosters in Universe mode, the part of the game that lets you play through the calendar in a kind of sandbox mode, something akin to playing a season in FIFA, or whatever FIFA's called nowadays. I've also been playing some Garfield Lasagna Party, which is a bit like Mario Party, only with Garfield. You travel around the board, and when everyone's had a turn, you play a minigame to earn pieces of lasagna. Whoever has the most lasagna at the end of all the rounds wins. Now, I made a couple of discoveries with Garfield's Lasagna Party. You can earn the platinum by simply winning all of the minigames on any difficulty, and you can pop the trophies by choosing the minigames rather than having to hope they come up in the Mario Party-esque board game. And so it was that I decided I would stream the hunt for the plat. Though whether I've done that stream by the time this episode airs, I do not know at the time of scripting. Now here's one for you, and before you call me out on my BS, I know I'm a hypocrite for condemning all the remakes and remasters we keep getting and then sitting down to play them all. But I'd never played the Oregon Trail before, though naturally I'd heard quite a lot about the game, particularly how difficult it was, so when I chanced across the PS5 Oregon Trail Deluxe, I simply had to pick it up. And at what I consider a very reasonable price too. To ease myself into the game, I took my first group of settlers through on the easiest setting, and I made it to Oregon with all 4 alive, though it did look a bit touch and go for a couple of them at times. A second playthrough must be attempted on a higher difficulty to try and get that more authentic experience. A message flashed up on the screen to say that some changes had been made to the game to give better representation to the character of the Native Americans you meet on your travels. Not having played the original, I don't know how the indigenous peoples were portrayed, but I hope their portrayal in the remake is more accurate and less disparaging, if that had been an issue previously. Anyway, I had a really good time playing the Oregon Trail, and plan to either make content for YouTube or else stream some at some point down the line. Before that though, I had prepared some Nintendo Wii content for YouTube in January, but sickness prevented me from editing the videos together and uploading, so I'll hopefully have them all up before the end of the month, if I get the chance to catch up with myself. But that's not all I've been playing. I also recently picked up Epic Mickey Rebrushed and Funko Pop Fusion, the latter of which I have had a brief sit down with. I haven't gotten far into the game yet, but I have fought who I would say is the first boss of the game, and so far, I'm having a good time with it. And unless I'm very much mistaken, I believe that's everything I've been playing recently. But before we press on to the next part of the show, I just want to say that I've finally gotten my hands on a copy of the remaster, I know, of Brothers Tale of Two Sons. So, I will be playing this on a live stream soon, I can assure you. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any communications for Listeners' Whispers this week, so instead, we'll jump straight into the main part of the show. Let's play a little game. A mini-game, you might call it. I'm going to speak very briefly about 10 games, and you can try to guess what the connection is between them. There are no prizes for winning, save that warm feeling you'll have inside for being right. Don't worry, I will tell you what the connection between them is, and then that will become the topic for the rest of the show. First up then is my favourite game I've ever played to date, Red Dead Redemption 2, the prequel to Red Dead Redemption. You play as Arthur Morgan, outlaw and loyal member of the Dutch Van der Linde gang, fleeing from trouble but constantly running headlong into more trouble. Or how about Animal Crossing New Horizons? You move to a remote island inhabited by cute anthropomorphic critters and must try to make a living to pay off the mortgage you've taken out with Tom Nook. But don't worry, he is pretty chill about it and won't evict you if you're late on your repayments. No Man's Sky is altogether pretty different, as it's quite literally out of this world. You're a space explorer travelling unimaginable distances across galaxies, discovering new flora and fauna and running errands for different guilds, be they lawful or less so. Okay then, I mentioned this next game in the previous part of the show. I've recently been playing the Oregon Trail, in which you must guide a party of 4 in covered wagons across the North American frontier of the mid-1800s, from small-town Independence to Oregon City. Another one of my favourite games is Stardew Valley. You create your own character who has a soulless job working at corporate for Jojamart. That is, until you remember the sealed letter you inherited from your late grandpa, the deeds to a farm on the outskirts of Pelican Town in Stardew Valley. Can you turn a profit, though? Or perhaps you like things a little spookier. Graveyard Keeper looks aesthetically somewhat similar to Stardew Valley, but the premise is a bit more chilling. The central character is victim to a hit-and-run accident, and when he comes round, he appears to be in a medieval village charged with taking care of the recently departed. And staying medieval, how about Medieval Dynasty? You wander out of the wilderness and must find a way to survive. There's no room in the town, so you must build your own shelter to survive the approaching winter. You'll also need to take care of feeding yourself and avoiding run-ins with bandits on the roads. Eastshade has a kind of medieval fantasy vibe to it. Graphically, it always puts me in mind of Skyrim, only it's far more forgiving in the early game, allowing you to progress nicely. You're shipwrecked on a voyage to Eastshade, and thankfully wash up where you wanted to be. It's a fairly gentle game, and like Animal Crossing, the characters are all anthropomorphic animals. A real gaming delight, this one. Then there's Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which takes us back to the very early medieval period. You play as Eivor of the Raven clan, one of many Viking invading forces into England in the 900s AD. Or lastly, what about Virtual Villagers: A New Home? A bit like the start to Eastshade, your tribe run into trouble at sea and wash up on an island. It looks like you weren't the first people here, but through learning skills like agriculture, construction, and scientific research, you may eventually come to understand the island's secrets. So what's the connection between all these games then? I'll give you a minute if you are playing along at home. You may have already guessed it, though I'm not sure it will be immediately apparent to everyone. It's nothing cryptic, I can assure you of that, and if you'd like a clue, I'd say it has something to do with a particular pastime, though for some people, it's their line of work. And if you haven't guessed already, I shall tell you. In all of these games, you can go fishing, and I thought I could talk a little about the fishing mechanics in these games and potentially rank them. Starting first then, or last perhaps, as I am ranking this the lesser of all the fishing experiences in today's list, with Virtual Villagers. And please note this is not a slight against the game itself, it's just that Virtual Villagers gives you, the player, the least involvement. To get the villagers to do anything, you simply pick them up and drag them on to whatever it is you want them to do. Now, fishing in Virtual Villagers is a skill that must be unlocked. To start out, you'll want a villager to begin foraging. Drag them onto fruits that fall to the ground and they will bring them to the food store, though note, I don't think adults can forage mushrooms. The tribe's children must be sent to fetch these. When an adult has foraged enough, they will be able to water the strange patch of soil in the middle of the island, and from there they can begin farming and harvesting crops. With enough agriculture experience, you can drag your villager over to the sea and they will begin fishing. The reason I placed this mechanic at the bottom of the list is because you don't have to do anything. The villager will automatically traipse back and forth, catching fish and bringing them to the food store. Saying that, I do like how fishing is something that must be learned, as with all the other skills in the game, and you can't just set your villagers straight to it from the get-go. It's a slow-paced game, but interesting to watch everything play out. In at number 9 on today's list is Medieval Dynasty, and for similar reasons to Virtual Villagers, only there is slightly more to fishing in this game. As you play and build new constructs, you will unlock new skills and abilities. It's been a little while since I played Medieval Dynasty, so my memory is a little hazy, but I think the first step is to build a fishing hut. In Medieval Dynasty, you slowly build your own settlement, and can hire people from the nearest town to join your fledgling community, so long as you have enough houses to home them all, that is. Now, if you employ someone to work in your fishing hut, they will go fishing for you. But another thing you can do is to build fishing nets that you can place in the river. Leave them a while, and when you come back to check on them, you just might have a catch that you can pick up, cook, and store or eat, or share with your new neighbours. As such, you aren't completely left out of the process when it comes to fishing in Medieval Dynasty, but there's not much to it from memory, hence I've ranked it so low out of the fishing experiences I'm talking about today. And by the way, I appreciate that some of you listeners might feel that it's better to have less to do to catch fishing games, as it frees you up to do other things. If you want to go fishing in video games though, this list is looking at which games offer the more involved and all-round better fishing experience. Of which I'm putting No Man's Sky in at number 8. No Man's Sky starts requiring a little more input from the player. You must build a fishing rig on a body of water, and you'll also need this fishing attachment for your multi-tool. Furthermore, you will need to hook bait on your, well, let's just call it a fishing rod for ease of understanding, shall we? You climb aboard your fishing rig, bait your rod, and cast your line wherever you see fish swimming around. And that's all you have to do. From memory, I think the game automatically collects the fish for you at this point, and there's not even the requirement to press a well-timed button prompt in order to reel them in. It's nice that the developers added fishing to No Man's Sky, as it opens up a whole new host of animal life to pay attention to, in addition to the beasts of the land and the skies. It makes each planet feel more like a fully living world. It's just that having one more step to determine the success or failure of a catch would have elevated the experience for me, and might have seen me place No Man's Sky above the next 2 entries in today's lecture. It feels a bit mean-spirited putting Animal Crossing New Horizons all the way down in 7th place, for 2 reasons. 1, it's a lovely cutesy little game, and I'm reluctant to have a bad word said against it. And 2, ACNH offered an escape from reality during lockdown, and many people used it as a means to socialise with friends by virtually visiting one another on their islands. To go fishing in Animal Crossing, you will need a rod, which I don't think you can get straight away in a new game. You don't need to worry about bait, but rods do break after so many uses, so my advice is to make sure you're always carrying a spare or 2. You'll then run around the island looking for the silhouettes of fish under the water in the sea, around your coastline, but also in your rivers and lakes. You cast your line and wait for the fish to bite. They'll nibble first, so be careful to only press the button when your float is pulled under the water. Your character will then pull the fish in with no more input required from you. You can take any new fish to the museum where they will be displayed in the aquarium, or you could display them in your home or around the island, if you felt so inclined. Otherwise, you could always sell them to Timmy and Tommy at the island's shop, Nook's Cranny, to earn some more bells, the in-game currency. I would say the Oregon Trail should probably place the same as Animal Crossing because the actual fishing minigame is virtually the same. I haven't just ranked it in 6th in this list because it's shiny and new though, although I concede this may have had some impact on my decision, and I might swap these games' order if asked again at a future date. But I will attempt to defend my choice, so please hear me out. The fishing minigame in the Oregon Trail Deluxe has you cast your line out to where you spot the silhouette of a fish in the water. It will nibble at your line and you must wait until your line is pulled underwater before pressing the button to make your chosen traveller pull in the catch. That much all sounds the same as Animal Crossing, right? I don't think you have to worry about your rod breaking though, but as I said in the intro, I've only played on the easiest setting so far, so I may stand corrected yet. You do need to make sure you're carrying bait as well. You can buy this from general stores when you reach settlements along your journey, or you can trade items with other parties of travellers, or with the indigenous peoples that you encounter on the road. The other reason I placed fishing in the Oregon Trail above Animal Crossing is because you have to choose to follow trails that will lead you to fishing spots before you can try your hand at fishing. The fact that you can't just run around fishing at will all the time makes it feel a little more special, as well as offering some short respite from the hardships your party will face on the open road. And it gives you a chance to replenish your depleting food stocks and stave off starvation a little longer. One last thing to mention before we move on to the next game is that if your party are carrying fishing traps, you can bring back some more fish to keep you fed in addition to the ones you caught yourself. Fishing just feels more significant in the Oregon Trail and can be the difference between life and death at times, so it's for this reason that I scored it just slightly ahead of Animal Crossing. What's the deal with fishing in Graveyard Keeper then? It's a little bit like fishing in another game that I'm going to talk about later, no points for guessing which one. You need to have a fishing rod that you can get from the Lighthouse Keeper. As you go about the game world, you'll find fishing spots. Before casting your line, these will tell you the percentage chance you'll have of catching fish there, so look for spots with the higher probabilities. Even then though, I found fishing in Graveyard Keeper to be challenging, to say the least. You cast your line and have to wait for the right moment to hit a button before you get into the reeling minigame. I think you have to pay really close attention to your float to see when it bobs twice, but as I say, I was never really confident I knew what I was doing, and it really felt like anyone's guess as to whether I was going to time it right and catch anything or not. Anyway, get your timing right, and you get to play the reeling in minigame, as I said. There's a picture of a fish that moves up and down, and you must keep your accuracy bar next to it until it's caught. Remember that description for later. Although it's not exactly the same, it will sound virtually the same when I describe a game that I think improves on the fishing experience some. Next up, I'm awarding Assassin's Creed 4th place on today's list. It's been a hot minute since I played Valhalla, but from memory you can find fish in the rivers using eagle vision. You then have a line that you swing above your head, rather than it being attached to a rod. When a fish bites, I think you are required to pull it in, being careful not to let it break your line in the process. Honestly, it's possible AC Valhalla should have ranked higher today, but I'm left a little fuzzy on the details, and that's because I remember I didn't actually do a lot of fishing in this game. Well, I love fishing in video games, so I figured there must be a reason that wasn't the case in Assassin's Creed. It could be because I wanted to get on with being a Viking, but I think it must have had something to do with the fishing experience being a little lackluster, because as we'll find out, if the experience is good enough, you won't be able to pull me away from fishing. And that brings us on to our medalists, and taking home the bronze is Stardew Valley. You're gifted a starter rod from Willie, who runs the fish shack down on the beach, and you can buy stronger rods from him when you've enough gold saved up as well. You don't need to bait your line, but it will increase the chance of something biting quicker. You can cast your line out into any body of water from any point on land, and then wait until a yellow exclamation mark appears over your head. Press the button quickly at this point to enter the reeling in minigame, which plays very much like what I described in Graveyard Keeper. A picture of a fish moves up and down the screen, and you must keep your green bar behind it until it's caught. The difference is that it's much more apparent when you need to trigger the reeling in minigame in Stardew Valley than it is in Graveyard Keeper, hence the reason I placed it higher in this ranking. Eastshade takes the silver medal today. You can buy a fishing rod from one of the market stalls in Narva, but before you can use it you'll need to go foraging for eggs and mushrooms, which you can find on the forest floor. Now you can bait your line and go looking for fish. You'll find them swimming in schools in the rivers and ponds. Cast your line and wait for your hook to bob 3 times. Now you just need to press the action button and maybe hold it down to reel the fish in, but watch the tension on the line to make sure it doesn't break. Give the fish just a little slack if it's fighting too much. I haven't seen Eastshade get much attention ever, but it's a really sweet little game, and the setting looks gorgeous too, so I'd like to start doing what I can to publicise it more. Anyway, we've come to our first place gold medalist for my personal favourite fishing experience in a video game. You already know what it is because I told you the games we're talking about at the top of the segment. Red Dead Redemption 2 does everything that it does impeccably well, hence the reason it's my favourite game I've ever played to date. I think you need to get to Horseshoe Overlook and take Jack fishing before you can unlock it to go fishing at will. There are many different things you can use as bait, including bread, cheese, worms and crickets, but you'll really want to be getting your hands on the special lures you can buy at Le Grasse as soon as possible. Like some of the other games already discussed, you bait your line, cast it, wait, and reel it in once you've got a bite. only the experience is just that bit more immersive, just paying a little closer attention to detail. Okay, so you choose your bait and stroll up to the water's edge. A fantastic song by 7 Mary 3. If you like grunge rock, I implore you to check them out. I'm going to be talking PlayStation controls here. Hold L2 and then press and hold R2 to pull your rod over your shoulder. Release R2 to cast the line and then wait for a bite. You slowly reel in your line or flick it to imitate insects moving over the surface of the water and attract the fish. When you get a bite, press R2 to hook the fish and then rotate the right analog stick to reel in the line. When the fish starts fighting, stop reeling, or else you'll snap your line. Once reeled in, you can decide whether you're keeping it to sell, cook up for yourself, or donate to Pearson to feed the gang, or if you're throwing it back, which will improve your honour rating. All in all, RDR2 just does fishing that little bit better, and set in the most beautiful game world I've ever gazed upon, it really is a special experience. And that's my rundown of what it's like to go fishing in a selection of minigames. There are, of course, many others I could have talked about. You may remember I played Moonglow Bay on YouTube over a year ago. But why don't you tell me your favourite game to go fishing in? Drop me an email to offrailgamer@gmail.com and tell me your thoughts. You can find that email address in the podcast episode description. Otherwise, I think I've about talked enough for today, so I'll catch you next time. Bye!